You are watching Co-op for Two, broadcasting live from Champaign, Illinois, Wednesday night, November 2nd, 2022 at around 10 p.m., hour before our normal time. And today we're doing a sort of channel update live Q&A combined. You know my strategy for these things. I do these as if they are government mandated things that every person must do. So we're doing it because we must do it. We're doing the requisite stuff, and we're doing it for practice to have fun. And I see we've got some of our normals here in the channel to keep me company. You guys who joined me for most of the live streams are not going to get much out of this, but I appreciate you being here. Okay, if anyone is new, feel free to jump in the chat. If you've got questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm not sure what I can provide insight on other than the oddity of doing a YouTube channel. And I've got some things to test out new here. Let's see, we can try this. You can see this little slide that I've got up as we walk through the slides. Let's look at an overview of today's session here. Okay, so I'm going to go over some stats for the channel. Perhaps if you're interested in starting a YouTube channel, they'll be useful. Otherwise, probably not. I'll talk about the videos that have been put up since the last channel update, which was 6 months ago. I'll talk about various software releases, open source software I've put out for OBS, which is the streaming software that I and many others use, and Adobe Premiere, some plugins I've written for that. I'll talk about briefly upcoming plans for the channel. We'll do our traditional apologies, acknowledgements, corrections. Then we'll take questions. You can ask questions now in the chat if you have any. And then I thought we'd talk about some new YouTube not new YouTube channels, but some YouTube channels I'd like to recommend. All right, so let's get started with some channel stats. Again, I present these without, well, not without comment, but these are not to say, hey, look how great the channel is doing. They're just to give you the facts in case you're curious. Okay, so 5 months ago, we did our last update. And this is almost exactly 2 years that the channel has been filming and on the air. 317 videos in that total 2-year period. 1.47K subscribers, 170,000 views, whatever that means. In the last 5 months, 18 recorded videos and 89 live videos, which total over 200 hours. Most of those recorded videos, or at least a majority of them, are little demos for my software, OBS plugins, and so on. But a bunch of reviews, we'll talk about that. Okay, now we could go to the live YouTube stats if anyone wants to look at them. I don't know why you would, but I've just taken a couple of screenshots to show you. I don't know what any of this means. I don't. The only thing I look at when I go to YouTube, the analytics page, is if there are any interesting subscribers to the channel. Other than that, I don't know how to make any sense out of any of this, but we'll look at a little bit of it. Impressions, click-throughs, I don't know how to use any of that. Okay, you can see this is over the total period, that the number of views and subscribers is basically a straight line, meaning no one is getting interested in the channel. There's no word of mouth. It's just whatever YouTube is pushing on people is tricking them into subscribing. Okay, here's revenue for the last 2 years. You can see I made a mistake here in June and accidentally had monetization on one of my electronics projects videos that got 18 cents of revenue before I managed to turn it off. This will be a good time to remind you that I don't take any money from any publisher. All the games I play are bought myself. Not to take away from anyone who is getting paid work and free games, but it's not something I'm comfortable with. This is a little weird because I tend to stream at 11 p.m. and you can see here's when viewers are actually online around noon, most of them. I guess they're watching videos, not live. And here's some interesting demographics. I don't know how this compares to most YouTube board game videos channels, but here we go. 45% from the US. Everything else is down here below 3%. Here we go with the viewers subscribed versus unsubscribed, not subscribed, so people just casually stopping by. Here we have 86% male. I think the females in the channel have to do a better job of showing up. And then this is probably what you would expect here in terms of age range. The kids do not like my video. It's mainly skewing older. And this is just in the last 6 months. Okay, so here are top videos for the last 5 or 6 months. You can see this spoiler-free review. People like the short videos. So here's a spoiler-free review of 5 games was the top views. I don't tend to, most of our videos are 6 hours long, so whatever. And then Hunt a Killer seems to be something popular that people are searching for. For some reason, the Old Tree review that Greg and I did is popular. We did that when it came out. No one cared. I guess no one had heard of Old Tree when we did it. And then Greg's Lord of the Rings How to Get Started in 2021 video, the most popular video on the channel by far in general, has slipped down a bit because it's 2 years old or a year old. For some reason, Legacy of Dragonholt is getting views now. That makes no sense. And then here's a breakdown of who's watching the live streams versus the recorded videos. Here's a list of where people are coming from when they find the channel. Most of them are being directed by YouTube, suggested, I guess, or on a YouTube search. And then external, 10% of the traffic is coming externally, and you can see most of that is actually from Board Game Geek. I do post on Board Game Geek when I review a game. When I play a game, I post the video on the Board Game Geek videos section. Thankfully now it just goes through. You don't have to wait 2 days. I'm not sure why that is. And then a little bit is coming from OBS and donationcoder.com, the website, my other website. Okay, that's it for the stats. Let's talk about my favorite videos in the last 5 or 6 months since the last update, or at least what we did. We finished the play-by-mail games. Those each took about 14 sessions, 14 turns each. We played those over the course of 4 months. It's surprising that that actually was playable, watchable. I don't know if it was watchable, but we did it. People joined for it, the regulars. It was interesting, and then I posted a review of that experience, of the play-by-mail experience. We played another fan case, the Magenta book, which was surprisingly good as part of our Halloween creepy supernatural stuff. And I do want us to do more fan cases, so we'll talk about that. We'll be doing more of it coming up. We played the complete 4-game set in the Cold Case Investigation Unit series. This was a series by Catherine Thompson, a UK detective, and it was very good. Isn't getting the notoriety it should, isn't getting the publicity it should, perhaps. I hope people do find that game. And I think this is the sort of thing that if this channel is good at anything, it's good at being sort of completionists. So we played all 4 games. They all took about 6 hours each, and then we reviewed the set and talked about it, and Jonathan Warner posted his long comments that are always very perceptive. So if we do anything well, it's sort of we comprehensively look at a series, play it, you can watch the playthroughs and then review it. I finally posted my review of the Baker Street Irregulars, one of my very favorite boxes of mystery game ever. And it's also discussed in the new video I just put up recently of top 10 longest, most epic mystery game detective experiences. So if you're a fan of these long marathon exhausting games, you might want to check out that video. And then over October, we tried to play even more than usual and more creepy, scary stuff than usual. That included a full Blair Witch season of 6 episodes. And I can see in the channel, Theo is saying more Hunt a Killer. Internet, but no Facebook. I see. Okay, well, the Hunt a Killer experience was interesting, but the real surprise was the Deadbolt Mystery Society, which you can see I've got on my shelf a whole bunch of them. We've played 2 of them now as part of October, really creepy adult horror scary ones, and they were both surprisingly enjoyable. So we're sort of all in on Hunt a Killer, and maybe if you buy them on sale, the best bang for your buck in terms of puzzly narrative, scary adult games. We played Dracula's Heir, a book. Essentially, we read a book a couple days ago on Halloween. Great fun, and I want to thank everyone who joined for that. That actually was enjoyable. And then the other videos were my open source software demo videos, which I'm going to mention here a little bit more. So I made videos for all of these, but early on I did some Adobe Premiere extensions and plugins that I've written. Those were featured on the Video Revealed channel, which is quite a popular YouTube Adobe Premiere channel. Probably two noteworthy, one for finding timestamps and points of interest in your videos while you're editing them in Adobe Premiere, and one for working with multi-camera editing for doing insets and stuff. And then maybe of broader use are my OBS plugins. I've been writing a bunch of those. I wrote a couple more scripts recently. There are videos for all of these. The one that's really turned out, though, that if I want to toot my own horn, the one that's really turned out well is the auto crop zoom one that zooms into an area on the table and magnifies it. That's let me read from the monitor, and has just been especially useful for the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style games. And I do want to credit Paul Grogan and his Gaming Rules channel, because he was the one who was playing those games by covering up all but the paragraph you're reading, and that inspired me to write a little plugin for that. That seems to be working pretty well, though I do need to, that's the one that uses these cubes to zoom in wherever they are. So I do need to make better cubes for that are more closer to color to it, to avoid getting some false positives. Okay, what's next? Upcoming plans for the channel. I hope you guys have got some questions to ask, otherwise we'll just sit here in silence. Okay, upcoming plans. All right, I don't really have anything to promise here. We're just going to do more of the same, which is almost entirely just these long 6-hour playthrough sessions, and then after we play it, we discuss the game, and if we play a series, then I'll do a standalone spoiler-free review. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing because that's what I enjoy, and there's no point in doing things that I don't enjoy. I do want us to play more fan-made cases, and we have a couple that we're going to play in the next week or two, and I do think when we play these fan-made cases, it's a bit scary. One of the, after we play it or before we play it, I tend to contact the author and say, hey, we're going to play your game. Is it okay? And if you don't like it, then it's scary to talk about, hey, you don't want to knock someone's game. It takes quite a bit of skill and work to make these games, even in the worst case. Even if they're terrible, someone has put a lot of work into it, and it's not easy. So it's a little bit scary, but we've had good luck so far. And it's fun to play a game where the author hasn't gotten much exposure and enjoys seeing their game played. One of the weird things about these kinds of games is that, especially if you're just an indie developer just writing it, you have very little experience enjoying the game you've made. You can't play it yourself, you know the story. So the only enjoyment you can get perhaps is hearing back from people who've played it, or maybe watching people who've played it. So at least we're doing that service. And I do want to thank again everyone who's been joining me for the recent live streams, especially over October. And of course, Jonathan Warner and Anna. It's been a real pleasure to play with you guys. The other thing I'm going to try to start doing is working a little bit more on my detective campaign game that I'm trying to write, which I'm naming High and Low, based on my Akira Kurosawa favorite film noir movie. And I might give more updates on that if I can make a little more progress. And another video I'm going to try to make soon, we'll talk about. So for those of you who don't know, I did make a 5-hour video series on how to film for YouTube board game content in a small micro studio. And I do need to make a little update video talking about the latest gadgets and tips and tricks I've used. So I do want to do that. Okay, before we get to the questions, let's do our last thing here, which is going to be our traditional apologies and acknowledgements. Let's see, I'll just play this here. I think you're not hearing any sound. That's fine. Okay. I do want to take a minute to acknowledge Greg, who started this channel with me, and the friendship that was sort of damaged by this channel, and take responsibility for the role I had in not being able to repair that, and talk about the sort of psychology of YouTube and collaboration in general. And lots of mistakes were made there. For various reasons, we couldn't make it work, but the friendship sort of got dissolved during the turmoil of trying to make things work, and that's a real shame, and I do miss Greg and miss hanging out with him. And, you know, I watched some of these old videos where we're laughing and having fun and remember the discussions we had about board games, and I do miss him. And, you know, the channel has completely shifted into playing these mystery games because those are the games that I enjoy playing solo with people on the channel. It makes a big difference, but it's a completely different experience, and I haven't really been playing too many normal board games, and definitely no cooperative board games, and that's because I learned a long time ago that I really don't enjoy playing the cooperative standard board games like Pandemic unless I'm playing them with someone who I really get on the same wavelength with and want to spend hours talking about games. And Greg was one of the few people in my life that I really connected with on the cooperative games, and we really both enjoyed talking about them. And I think, you know, it pays in life to sort of acknowledge when you meet someone that you connect with and in that way, and acknowledge that it's sort of rare and valuable thing. And it's really a shame that that friendship got dissolved. Largely, at least the channel was the catalyst for that. So yeah, I think one of the things I've learned about collaborating, and I would recommend you try to collaborate with someone. And if you can find a YouTube channel idea and you're interested in doing that, and you can find someone to work with that you really like, it can be very rewarding. That's really what I wanted out of this. I wanted it to be a way for the friendship to have time to create something in addition to enjoying all this stuff. And one of the things, if I've learned something about collaborating, is, you know, there's some people that are good at involving other people in what they're doing. And one of the real mistakes I made with this channel and in trying to create it as a collaboration was that I wasn't very good at sort of bringing Greg in to help figure everything out. So I was sort of like, oh, I'll go figure this out. I'll go figure out how to do this. I'll go figure out the equipment. And I thought I was doing a good thing because Greg was busy with work and stuff. But I think in the end, I did not make it something that felt like it was a true collaboration. And I think I've also learned that I've got my strengths, but I'm not that fun to collaborate with. I tend to be looking for the worst case scenarios and preparing for them rather than getting excited about the good stuff. And it's sort of a shame that Greg didn't get to come along to the point where it's just fun. And right now it is just fun. But yeah, okay, so we've done that. We've talked about that. All right, let's do some question and answer stuff now. And then at the end, if we have time, I'll talk about we'll talk about some other YouTube channels I would recommend when we have some spare time. And I think, let's see if I can get the this stuff working here. Let's see. Okay, so you guys can see this thing down at the bottom, right? Robert says, hi Jesse, thanks for having this video a little earlier than normal. Hard for me to stay up overnight. Okay, so hopefully this is showing as I answer questions. Purple Princess says, I love the auto zoom stuff. Thank you. Robert says, a lot of fun staying up during the 9-hour Deadbolt Mystery Society, the Body Farm, but I had to go right at the end. Melissa Westfall says, came in a little late, so I'm sorry if you already went over this, but as someone that is just now dabbling in this genre, what would you recommend as a good starting point? That's a great question. I did a video quite a while ago called So You Want to Try a Narrative Detective Mystery Game. So that might be a good place to start. And I think it would be useful for me to make a couple more of those, sort of where to start and the different things. What I would suggest is there's a couple different genres, but on one hand, you have the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style games. On the other hand, you have the cold case document dump games. Those feel very different, but those are both pure deduction. What I would suggest probably these days, what I suggest is to pick up the Harmony Ashcroft Unsolved. It's Unsolved something. You can get it on Amazon. That is a really good place to start if you're just getting started, and maybe one of the adventure games that's on Amazon that's frequently on sale for like $15. That's either Death in Antarctica or Fire in Adlerstein. Those are both great games, easy to buy. Those are the document dump type games. And then I always recommend Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective Baker Street Irregulars box. That's a giant box. If you really enjoy it, you've got a lot to play with there. And then now that I've played some Deadbolt Mystery Society games, those would be my choice for the best sort of puzzle, horror, scary adult stuff. If you like serial killers and hearing about people being killed, that's different than the other two. That's mainly puzzle based, but I would go to the Deadbolt Mystery Society page and wait for one to come on sale. The Cabin was very good. I might recommend that, or Body Farm was very good too. Those would all be good starting places. Robert says Deadbolt Mystery Society has a free print and play mini mystery. You could try that. You could also get the Baker Street Irregulars has a free quick Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective Baker Street Irregulars print and play game. You could try that. Robert is saying maybe we could try the free Deadbolt Society game. I don't know if we need to play that. Let's play the real ones. Let's play the real big ones. I've got a bunch of those Deadbolt Mystery Societies. Keep your eyes open for when they come on sale. I buy a lot of these games, these kinds of games, occasionally used, but I think what I've learned about Deadbolt Mystery Society is just wait for them to come on sale and buy them new. And we're going to be playing, let me say this, Robert, the idea of playing a game that everyone can get for free I like, but the way we're going to do that is we're going to play the fan-made print and play Sherlock Holmes consulting detective cases, one of which we'll play in a week or two, called Burglary at Bellamy's. Everyone can get that, download and print it and play it. Stacy says, I see you're playing Postmortem this weekend. Have you gotten it yet? I have gotten it. This is Postmortem London Gothic with the subtitle Ghost in the Machine. On the channel, we stumbled onto these Postmortem LA series many months ago. Set in LA, film noir, made by the Mysterious Package Company. Incredibly good games. I did a full spoiler-free review of the series, as well as we played all of them. Incredible games, and they just released this new one, which is not in LA, different, but looks very interesting. Looks like it could be a little long. And we're scheduled to play that starting on Friday, probably continuing Friday and at least Saturday. I'm very much looking forward to it. Okay, Theo says, are you ever going to do a giveaway? The answer to that is no. No more giveaways for me ever. I've done giveaways in two forms in my life. On donationcoder.com, which is a software, donationware-based software site where people can pay whatever they want. And we've done giveaways on that site occasionally to sort of celebrate 10 years of the site. And we did a giveaway on this channel at some point when I gave away my Detective City of Angels and a couple more games. I don't like it. I don't like doing it. There's no enjoyment out of it for me. I see these YouTube board game channels do it. It makes sense. You've got these games, selling these games you don't play anymore that the publisher gave you or that you bought, or occasionally giving away new games, and you contact the publisher and you say, hey, we're having a giveaway. It'll get you publicity. It'll get me publicity. It's just work. It doesn't bring me any enjoyment. And I feel like the people that come for those, they're not coming for the videos on your channel. They're coming for the giveaways. It's just the wrong thing. I don't want the publicity. I'm not trying to get viewers from doing giveaways. If I have games that are that I trade or whatever, if you're a viewer of the channel and you want a game, you let me know. Maybe we'll just send it to you, or you'll trade or whatever. Jonathan Jang says, have you ever thought about getting Jonathan and Anna with a camera on the stream? That's a good question. So, I'm interested in the sort of technology about hooking up things and setting up little gadgets and stuff. So I did spend a little bit of time configuring OBS so that I could have a live conversation with someone, split the screen with them, whatever, to do something like that. And I asked Jonathan if he would ever be interested in that. He said, nope, I'm not interested. So let me tell you my position on that in general. I do think it would be fun to try, and I'm more interested in figuring out the technology of being able to do it smoothly and sort of practicing with that. However, there's a lot of different ways that YouTube content creators, I say with a very negative connotation, do live stream plays. One of the ways is they have their friends, they have other people in the video chat in a little window, and they play the game with them as if you were playing on a telephone or across Zoom. And I appreciate that, but I don't want to do that. I think from my standpoint, it's better, it's calmer, whatever enjoyment I get out of it and whatever calmness there is. I think these channels are my channels for helping people fall asleep at night. And I think having multiple people talking, and I hate talking on the phone. There's something about the delay and waiting for a reply and everything. I just find it very awkward. So for me, I like this setup where it's just me talking And I occasionally check in on the chat and we talk about moves when we get stalled, but there's no audible back and forth. So I think as a general principle, I will not be playing with live friends playing with me on the talking. But I would like to do some experiments where someone joins me, maybe at the end, to be on camera via Zoom and give their thoughts. And I am curious about setting that up to work smoothly. Okay, Robert says, are you open to sending games that have already been played? Absolutely. I get no pleasure out of punching stuff and whatever, and as long as you don't write on it, I'd be happy to trade games with people. We are starting to tiptoe into some expensive games that are made by these subscription companies. The most expensive one I just purchased for about $300, which was a game by Cozy Killer called The Hidden Listener, set in 1942, spanning 12 little boxes. Those are very expensive to purchase on my own. Those are games, and you can only play them once. So I think I'd like to find people who are willing to trade some of these larger games. So I'll send you that one, you send me another one, and maybe we can get some of these larger games played. Have you thought about doing a room tour, says Water? Well, I did a little bit of a room tour in my 5-hour course on filming board game content in a micro studio. So if you watch that video, you can see a tour of the table, of the overhead mounted camera. So what those videos have some discussion. I have a little tour of how I made this table and the room and the setup and all that, and I'll do another soon. Did I show the webcam view from here? I do have there, you can see the view from my desk there of the cameras. You can see the cameras that are in front of me. I have one right behind the front camera. Off to the side is a little chat. Then you're seeing the monitor on my desk and the overhead beam. I talk about that beam and how everything is set up on that video course that I recommended. What else? Any other things? Matt says, I'm gonna wait for this. The software I'm using to pull up questions on the screen is a free program called H2R Graphics. Matt says, can you reveal a little bit more about High and Low? Is it a document game, Sherlock Holmes consulting style, etc.? It's going to be a bit of a hybrid of both of those. I would say primarily inspired by the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style, but my idea is to have a large packet, similar to Vienna Connection, of documents. They won't be props, they're not going to be key rings and stuff in it, but full-sized 8.5 by 11 documents like police reports, autopsy reports, photographs, maybe some smaller photographs. So while you're playing the game, you'll be instructed to go get this document. So if you go to the coroner, it might tell you, go get document 25, and then you'd pull that out and get that. The idea of it is that I think the closest inspiration is Gumshoe. So it spans 13 games from the 1930s through the 1960s. You'll follow one protagonist over the course of 13 games. In each game will be set in a specific year in New York City. You'll start as a rookie homicide cop or pre-homicide detective and progress through someone's life. And in each game, there'll be a case that wraps up, but continuing cases that are spread throughout. One case that's spread through every game, some cases that span a couple games here and there. I'll try to do some new mechanics. We'll get a chance. One of the main points of this game idea is to sort of explore the theories we've been talking about what makes these games work. When are they enjoyable? Ideas for hiding information, etc. The other part of this is to sort of lean hard into part of the enjoyment I get from these games, which is feeling like you're a tourist time traveler to a different time and place. So there'll be a lot of tourism stuff in this game, going to places and museums and world events just to experience them in the game, sort of separate from the mystery part. You'll be able to explore New York City in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s and see how the game, how the city changes. Besides the convention you went to earlier, are there any other conventions for mystery game fans you recommend? Well, if you guys know, let me know, because Gen Con had basically nothing. And if someone knows, I know occasionally I've seen someone talk about some of the sites that review these puzzle games mentioned a couple of mystery games, probably outside the US. Britain and Germany have much more of a population of people who like these games, these kinds of games. And so I think England in particular has a long tradition of these kinds of games. And so if you're in England or Germany, you can probably find some little local conventions. Jonathan says, any games slated for release in 2023 that I'm excited about? Dave Neal did a kids game, a Sherlock Holmes sort of inspired detective kids game that I'm not personally excited about, but I'm excited to send to my niece, and looks good, looks beautiful with animals, but real detective. I think so. I'm almost completely free of Kickstarter stuff. I don't even pay attention to it much anymore because it's so expensive and so over the top with the minis and stuff. And I still have some Kickstarters that I backed a year ago that are coming that I'll never play because I don't have someone to play with. But I am very much interested in playing this big cozy killer game and trying some of these more subscription games. So they're not new games to the world, but they're new games to me. One other thing I will say, though, is it is bizarre to me that Chronicles of Crime has not been challenged with competitors using similar system. It's such a good, clean, elegant system. And I don't understand why other companies have not come out with rival products to Chronicles of Crime. And one of the things I'm trying to figure out with High and Low, with my campaign game, is how much whether I should code a kind of infrastructure that would let you use an app in some way. Nerd Shelves came by. Okay, well, the Nerd Shelves is a YouTube channel, and it's actually in my list here at the end of 10 little YouTube channels I wanted to recommend. So you might want to stay for that, or at least check it out later. But it's a very cute channel, the Nerd Shelves, and they're on my list that I'll show you at the end of this when we finish this video. Robert says, from time to time, you and others mention people watch movies, and Robert is recommending 1977 movie called Roller Coaster. I'm not sure I remember that movie. It makes me think of Black Sunday, a really great sort of terrorist movie. There's a lot of terrorism in real life in the 70s, and it created some great movies, but Black Sunday is one of them. Very cool. Has anyone watched yet the movie I keep pushing on this channel, the new movie The Stranger on Netflix? It's one of those slow burn movies that I really loved, especially since the movies this year have been so bad last couple years, but I really love The Stranger. I've also been watching on the Cabinet of Curiosities anthology. Too much gore, but very H.P. Lovecraft, little inspired short stories, but they're an hour long. I guess I would recommend it, but you have to have a high tolerance for gore if you want to watch those. Let's see what else we got. I just saw one go by. There's Reality Escape Con, more physical escape rooms. Yeah. Okay. Any genre setting you wish was more incorporated into these mystery board games? Well, we played a science fiction one. It didn't really do it for me. One of the reasons that I'm excited about making a detective campaign game is I'd like to see it set in New York City. I don't know why we don't get more of these detective games set in New York City. We played a dossier game. We're going to play a couple more of these dossiers from the 30s in the next month or so. But I think we've also seen, Jonathan, from these horror games we've been playing over October, deliberately looking for horror, creepy, scary games that are mystery games, that really works quite well in this setting. And I'd like to see more of the Bureau of Investigations, the Gregory Pravat's box, and Mythos Tales. I'd like to see more horror H.P. Lovecraft settings for the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style games. And that's exactly what Dispaminite says. And let's see. So there were a couple questions here that were sent in earlier. If you're interested in the Deadbolt games, are you now more interested in doing more escape room style puzzle games on the channel? That was actually a little question that I wondered for the channel. My view has always been that the puzzle games make for very risky and unwatchable YouTube videos. So I do enjoy some of these puzzle games occasionally, but what I find is, I'm not the fastest thinker, and so you sit with a puzzle that might take you an hour or 2 hours to do in real life. Sometimes you encounter a puzzle that you really would like to sleep on and think about. And so it's quite hard to do that live in front of a camera. Now, we don't have to worry about losing viewers during a stream. That's not a problem. So we have set up something where we can put an overlay on the screen and just sit in silence for 10 minutes or 20 minutes. And we've done that. We've gotten a little lucky so far that we haven't hit puzzles that required an hour of quiet thinking, and it helps to have more people in the channel. But I do think it doesn't make for the most compelling live viewing, and there's some time pressure in those situations. Like, we want to finish the stream tonight. We don't want to say, okay, we're going to spend the next 5 hours just sitting here in silence. I'm not opposed to that. If we play a game where that happens, so be it. But I do worry about that in terms of being watchable as a live stream. And then maybe you could go one step further and say, even when you can solve the puzzles in 10 or 15 minutes, like we played these Deadbolt Mystery Society games, which are puzzle cipher games. I think those are hard to experience as a group. It's hard to experience in real life with 2 different people, 3 different people trying to work on the same puzzle. It often doesn't work. Usually it's one person who solves it. And so I think even in the best of circumstances, it must be hard for the viewers to participate in that. And I think it's hard over YouTube. Like, it's one thing to engage and talk about a mystery that we're reading. It's another thing to work with puzzle and look at it. And that feels like you need to be there holding this stuff. Now, the people who joined me, like Jonathan Warner and Anna and others recently, you've got some supernatural skills at watching on a screen and getting involved and being able to figure out what's going on and keeping engaged. But I think that's got to be harder as we get into the puzzle games, but you let me know. Let's see, what other questions? So the other question that I got ahead of time was some Trains Are Cool was asking, when are we going to start the Cozy Killer series, the Hidden Listener Soon, probably in a month or so. That's the big expensive one. I actually also bought on eBay for like 25 bucks the first 3 boxes in one of the other Cozy Killer series. And I thought, well, the first boxes look good. Maybe we'll play those, and if it's good, then we'll order the big one. And then a question about whether I've played all of the Sherlock Holmes Consulting detective boxes from Space Cowboys and whether I plan on doing streams on them. Well, I've played a good number of most of the cases in the Thames Murders box, so we won't be playing those. We've been playing recently on the stream the West End Adventures cases, which is in the Jack the Ripper Space Cowboys box. We'll finish playing those West End Adventure cases. We've been comparing the old versus the new. I've already played the Jack the Ripper cases in that box and had lots of negative things to say about it. The Carlton Park, the Queen's Park and Carlton House cases, which are based on the Queen's Park standalone and the Mansion Murders cases, we haven't played yet. The Queen's Park affair, which is that green box behind me, I was thinking we might play that over Christmas. It's fun to do like little special playthroughs on the holidays, especially if they take multiple days. Queen's Park is the last big standalone case, single case thing, sort of an epic long case, and we've been saving it, hoarding it like greedy little trolls to play on a special occasion. And Jonathan and I played Adventures by Gaslight and had an amazing experience. So we'll talk about whether we want to play that over Christmas. Anything else to talk about here? Murders in the Rue Morgue, sorry. Yes, Murders in the Rue Morgue is famous. There's movies about it as well. What else should we talk about? I think probably an hour is a reasonable length for these updates, so we've got a little bit more time. Shall we look at, while I'm waiting to see if there are any other questions? I had a couple of questions to ask you guys, but shall we first take a look at the YouTube channel recommendations that I wanted to make? Okay, so let's switch over here again. All right, so I just made a list of 10 YouTube channels to recommend, almost entirely focusing on channels with less than, say, 10,000 viewers. At first I thought, hey, why don't I do a video where I look at channels with less subscribers than me, but that didn't work. I couldn't find any, so we had to expand. Okay, so here's 2 I want to recommend. Adam in Wales, and I think I can start playing a little bit of these so you can get a feel for it.
Talking about how it feels to create a product which fails.
This is jumping in the middle of a video where I left off.
Should have been in the playtest.
Okay, so I stumbled on his video talking about, entitled, I Designed a Board Game and It Bombed. And he's got a whole bunch of videos on game design and publishing from a little independent developer perspective. But he was really just sort of honest and open and very insightful, talking about a board game that he liked, that he tried, that didn't work, and why it didn't work. So I really recommend his channel. He's got lots of interesting stuff. Here's a channel that I haven't watched much of, but he's got quite a bit of videos on board game design. And of course there are, there are some well-known game designers.
Hi YouTube, welcome to Gaming Indoors. I'm Ali, and in today's episode I'm going to be sharing with you the top 5 answers I got back from the internet when I asked the question, what exactly makes a board game good? If you do
Anyway, there are some good, well-known YouTubers that talk about game design, like Jeremy Stegmaier and stuff, but these are channels with 4.6 thousand viewers, 5.5 thousand viewers. Worth checking out. Okay, so here are two that sort of exceed my 10K limit, but Marco Arnaud is one of my favorite YouTubers. If I have to pick anyone to listen talk about a game, it's Marco. And he brings a very historical perspective to games, and he talks about popular new games, but also goes back into some older games, and he's got some interest in these narrative games as well. If you don't know Marco's channel, it's worth subscribing to.
Spires Ended. This is a solitaire and cooperative game. I play this solitaire, but you could have a group of people making the decisions together. It is a game of fantasy with a fantasy.
I could listen to, of all the YouTube board game people I watch, this Marco is the one that I find calming and reassuring and enjoyable to listen to. And then the Dungeon Drive is popular, but not as popular maybe as it can be. And he talks about adventure games, dungeon games, but also a lot of adventure game books and stuff. And the kinds of, the variety and old games that he covers that I didn't know about are really good. And he does a good job of putting these things in historical perspective. And here you can see
you will kind of have to like shove into a bucket to get it to fit. You're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on the Dungeon Dive, we're going to do a little beginner's guide to solo role-playing, the beginner's guide to solo RPGs. I've had a few people express interest in a video like this. I've had some.
So he'll spend time talking about related games and history of games, etc. Really appreciate that channel as well. A couple more here. So here, the nerd shelves drop by. Here they are over here. So just a couple of channels that I appreciate. So the nerd shelves are kind of goofy, happy couple. They play through these games, and they're just a very optimistic, cute couple. They occasionally do reviews, but mostly they're doing playthroughs, and you can see they're having fun and laughing and giggling and just having fun. And then Board Game Ramblings is a popular channel. The two of them do board game reviews. They like a lot of the same kinds of games I like, and they're insightful. And I really do appreciate both of them are quite insightful. Sometimes they have very different takes than I do, but very watchable, very good videos and covering games I care about. And then here's the Board Game Rundown, which I kind of get the same vibe I get from the nerd shelves in that it looks like they're having a good time. In some ways, I'm a little jealous of them. It's 4 friends, you know, the production quality is not the best, although they've switched to good microphones now. It's a little better. It's hard to fit in 4 people. But for me, when I watch that, these are all sort of indie, or, well, I guess you wouldn't call these guys here, the Board Game Rundown, are sort of indie guys. And I just appreciate that they're friends trying to make this work, and they seem to be enjoying themselves. Okay, and then I've got a couple of what I call outsiders here. You keep asking questions in the chat. I'll get back to it. These are my outsiders here. So Brian from Game Brigade, who I've talked to quite a bit, here he is talking about how the Origins board game table is not quite up to snuff. These guys all seem like they're friends, know each other, or cut from the same basic cloth of outsiders to the standard board game YouTube clicks. My mother always said, you know, if someone likes me, they're already 90% of the way to me liking them. Like, that's enough for me to like them. But anyway, Brian and I have talked about equipment and stuff, and he's been said some nice things, so I already am inclined to like Brian. I've talked about the King of Average quite a bit. He's the big subscriber here. I've talked about him in several respects. First of all, because he's purely Patreon supported, doesn't do paid Kickstarters, at least that I know of, or at least for now. And he's got some good contrary takes on some of these things. And all of these people occasionally post about when they have a philosophical disagreement with what's going on in the board game world. And he's good at this. King of Average is very good at what he does, covers Kickstarter stuff skeptically, and he seems to be doing this Patreon thing properly. And I've talked about this before. I would encourage you to support board game, any content on YouTube that you like, if they've got a Patreon, and try to wean them away from this Kickstarter preview money and paid board game stuff. It's very hard for anyone to make a living or even enough money to pay for the equipment or the games. And I would encourage you, if you like what someone's doing and they have a Patreon, the best thing we could do for this whole field of independent creators, artists, YouTubers, whatever, is to encourage the direct funding. That's the way to get people away from advertisements, get people away from feeling compelled to say good things and bias and everything. And then the Liege of Games at Chris, this is sort of the oddity here, because I sort of watch this. I sort of don't want to, but then I do watch his videos. I like that they're sort of raw, and you can see, but Brian is to it, Game Brigade, but he's been doing a lot of Kickstarter, sort of looking at what's new coming on Kickstarter, and they're just sort of more off the top of your head, and I've been watching it recently. Okay, and I don't think we're going to get to this. Okay, so that's that. Let's go away from here back to our normal view and catch up on any questions. Where's my thing here? Okay, let's see. Jonathan says, Jonathan Jang asked if you had to pick Detective Modern Crime or Chronicles of Crime, which would you choose? Chronicles of Crime. I think it's much easier to recommend Chronicles of Crime, first of all. I've talked about Detective Modern Crime board game. I really enjoyed it, but it's very, very easy for me to see how people could have a bad time. A group could have a bad time with that game. A group could have a bad time with Detective Modern Crime board game, either because they got unlucky about how they pursued the game, or even if they did it perfectly, you could get to the end and be very unhappy with the way that mystery was wrapped up. Whereas I have a very high opinion of Chronicles of Crime. The quality of the mystery writing, the smoothness of the game. We don't play it much on this channel. We played some fan-made cases that were quite good for Chronicles of Crime, but Chronicles of Crime is in many ways a real masterpiece, accomplishment. And especially for people new getting in, Chronicles of Crime, absolutely, I think is a better in all respects. But that's not to say don't play Detective Modern Crime board game. You might love it, although I prefer Vienna Connection. But it's cool. But I think Chronicles of Crime is better. Theo Colley says, Hunt to Kill or Deadbolt Mystery Society? That's a good question. I've been skeptical of those kinds of games. I enjoyed Blair Witch. We played over a series of nights. We played it over 3 or 4 nights. I am not, to me, the props. Hunt to Kill is a very highly polished, high production series of games with lots of props, hats, bottle openers, all kinds of stuff. That doesn't really do it for me, but I do appreciate their high production quality. They had high quality multimedia stuff. So I'm sort of skeptical of them. I reviewed their standalone boxes. I had very mixed feelings about it. One was bad, one was okay, one was pretty good. And I was very skeptical of Deadbolt Mystery Society. I am now consider myself a fan of Deadbolt Mystery Society. And I'll tell you why. First of all, and it's been useful in October comparing Blair Witch, which is $100 on sale, versus Deadbolt Mystery Society. We played The Cabin and we played Body Farm. You can get The Cabin for $10 when it goes on sale. So if you compare $10 on sale for The Cabin, which took us 2 full sessions to play, so about 12 hours, versus Blair Witch, which was $100 on sale and took us maybe 3 sessions to play. And I thought The Cabin was a better experience. We've now played 2 games by them. They're very low on props. Mostly it's just paper, but paper of different types. And the website and the material on the website can feel a little handmade, like it's all PDF based. It can be annoying. And some of the pictures you can see, not as much money went into them. But there's something going on at the Deadbolt Mystery Society that is producing good little short story mystery games with compelling stories and good puzzles. And they're making books too. I think it's a group of 2 brothers that are in charge of the Deadbolt Mystery Society, and they are clearly more skilled at this, at the core part, the heart of the storytelling, than the Hunt to Killer stuff is. So if you want the high production, high prop stuff, Hunt to Killer. But if you want bang for the buck, adult killery stories with good puzzles, I feel like Deadbolt Mystery Society has the edge. And if you just buy them on sale, when they go on sale at the Deadbolt Mystery Society website, you could get some great long gameplay out of $10 boxes. That's pretty impressive to me. Water says, I see somewhere Portal's making a new Batman detective game. Well, Portal did spin off the detective series into Batman Everybody Lies, which got pretty good reviews. I really didn't like their last spin-off, which was Dune House Secrets, which they said part 2 is coming out 6 months ago, and they just have gone totally radio silent about it. People didn't love that. But here, Batman Everybody Lives was received a little better. I'm very suspicious. In general, I think Portal Games has some reasons to be wary of their games until we play them. They're a little bit hit and miss. Robert says, A Killing Affair has a subscription model boxes. Yes, we played one of the Killing Affairs boxes, and another one is behind me there somewhere. No, that's Killer at Large. A Killing Affair has 3 different, they're a different company. They have 3 different types, and they've announced a new one, depending on length. And Independence Day was one of the games by A Killing Affair. And I'll try to get hold of that used because it's expensive. It's like $200 or so. They do say that they're coming out with a new game that will take longer to play. So we'll keep our eye on it. That would be one of those games that would be good to trade for. What case to Hunt a Killer is better? I'm not sure I understand that question. Maybe you could rephrase it. Blair Witch was good. You can watch our playthrough. We enjoyed it. It was very atmospheric and a very compelling story, but the actual puzzles in it were a little lackluster. I've heard good things about other Hunt a Killer box, like Curtain Call. But again, it seems like the actual puzzles may be less of a thing than the compelling storytelling. But we'll play more Deadbolt Mystery Society. I think I'm not going to be rushing to play more Hunt a Killer, but we may play some more when it comes to it. What else? I had some questions that I wanted to ask the channel. Well, first of all, is there anyone here that has a YouTube channel or any other project you're working on, any other creative project that you want to plug or talk about, or another YouTube channel you want to recommend? I'd be happy to have you discuss it here. No reason not to. If anyone has any ideas of games, what games they'd like to see played next, feel free to chime in. This would be a good time to remind you that there is a Board Game Geek guild for this YouTube channel. Board Game Geek has guilds. That's where people can create a little separate mini forum area for themselves. You'll find a link to that on the community tab in this channel, the YouTube community tab. There's a link to the Board Game Geek guild where we discuss our schedule of what games to play next. I'd welcome you to jump in there and make your vote for what game you want to see us play next. Jonathan says, I've asked this before. After a year, any mechanic you really wish was explored more in these mystery games? I'm not that good at being on your spot. Let me think if there was... I'll tell you what I think one of the nuts that hasn't quite been cracked in these Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style games is how you deal with scoring. So Sherlock Holmes consulting detective basically says the longer you take to solve it, the more you penalize your score. And for me, like the more leads you follow, for me, that's completely against the enjoyment of these games. So that gets thrown out the window. And you can ask questions based on how well they understand certain questions. And we've seen different games try different approaches to this. Razorhurst, the print and play game that's featured on my top 10 epic long mystery games, had a very interesting take. They basically went low tech. The author, it's just one person, John Keane, he basically says, like, he'll ask a question at the end of the game. He asks a question and then the person describes the answer. Like, how was this person killed? And then there's a paragraph describing it. And then it says to you, hey, give yourself 1 to 3 points based on how well you understood it. And to me, that's almost like the most elegant solution to this, because it's basically, sometimes when they ask a question in these games, we're like, we didn't quite get it, but we understood most of it. And I sort of like the idea of saying, here's the answer. You decide. How did you get 100% of that? Whatever. But one of the things I've been thinking about in trying to design a game is other ways you might challenge the player to get either a score or some kind of, maybe even just at the end of the game, some sort of stats on how they played the game. Like, were they completionists? Were they asking moral questions? Maybe that would be another way to answer this from Jonathan. Like, I always think one of the real missing elements here in these games is letting players make choices that aren't quite related to give yourself a score based on how well you understood this, but giving them some moral questions. Like, do they want to arrest this person who might be a good person who broke the law? Or do they want to let them go? Or just various subtle little side quest, moral, psychological questions with different narrative payoffs based on what they choose, and maybe some without a right or wrong answer. So I hope to explore some of that. But okay, so let me say that. I think there should be more little moral elements where the player can decide, are they all about arresting the criminal? If you broke the rule of the law, you get arrested? Or maybe they want to let someone go. Jonathan P says, I would also recommend Box 1. Well, we played Box 1 on the channel, and I would recommend it as well. Someone somewhere asked on a comment on one of my videos or Board Game Geek posts, but I couldn't find it again. And they were saying, can you recommend another game like Box 1? And I don't think I can, There was a precursor to Box 1, but everyone seems to agree it's not that great. Box 1 is unique. I don't want to spoil it, but it has a unique sort of gimmick and approach that's quite different. I think Box 1 would be a great gift to give someone. There's some games I mentioned that are gifts, good gifts for people who are new to this kind of game. There's a game I just recommended for that we thought was too easy. What was the game we just played that we thought was too easy that I thought the play-by-mail games. The play-by-mail games could be cool, relaxed experiences that I was suggesting might be a great gift to give for someone young or old. Box 1 would be a great gift to give to someone who's more into this kind of game, who might be a little more into really jumping into a mystery puzzly game, but would appreciate the surprise of it. Box 1 has some good surprises. Jonathan says, I watched your videos, purchased Death in Antarctica and completed it tonight. What is the best games to get started with? What games? Well, Death in Antarctica I thought was a great game. If you liked it, there's 3 more games from that company. Those are some of the very best games of that type. Also, the Hidden Games crime series, Hidden Games crime scenes series. If you're in Germany, you can get, by the way, like 2 or 3 more games in the Hidden Games series. In America, you've got maybe 2 or 3. I would recommend those after the Adventure series. More discussion about the potential with murders by mail. I agree with that. How many non-mystery game board game videos are on your channel? I don't know, maybe 100. They're all with Greg. Greg and I did non-mystery board game playthroughs and reviews. Those you can see. One of the things that might be nice one day is to put up the woke folder videos. I've talked about this before. This is where I get myself into a little bit of trouble. Woke isn't quite the right word, but non-politically correct outtakes. There are outtakes from our videos that my friends wouldn't let me put up because they're a little bit risque or whatever. There's not a big deal, but one of these days I'll be able to put those up. When I die, those videos will go up. At some point, I'm going to make a video of my top 10 favorite videos that are on the channel, because there are a couple that were put up early that I really do like. One was how to pay tribute to a board game friend who dies. Another one was how to be a good cooperative teammate. What do you think about a mystery like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, where you have to walk from location to location so you can only move around the map on each turn a certain amount of miles per day? Would it work? Well, we've seen a little bit of that mechanic. I do think it's a very interesting idea. We've seen that mechanic in a couple of these games. Detective Modern Crime board game penalizes you for moving from location to location, which adds this little element of trying to efficiently move. And Razorhurst, the print and play game, did a very similar thing. And it's interesting. I think it works. Vienna Connection had its own little interesting way of doing it. It does work, and you might even put those in a pile of mechanics similar to the print and play, to the play-by-mail games where you decide which detective to send where. And those are elements that add an efficiency gaminess thing that may be more of an illusion in terms of what it really does than anything else. But I'm in favor of the illusions in these games. I think if the players buy into it, it gives them something more to little just chew on. And I like this idea, and maybe this kind of thing, more of this kind of thing in terms of a gaming mechanic. It's not that you can never not do something, but maybe give yourself a way of encouraging players to optimize their moves, gives them something else to think about. Detective Modern Crime board game and Dune House Secrets tried to go in that direction with resource tokens, and if you run out, you can't do something. I'm not in favor of that, but if you could find little ways to tweak this to encourage players to optimize, I do think that's worth pursuing, and I'd like to hear more ideas about that. Melissa says, what are your feelings about the way some of these games utilize the internet? Well, that's a great question. And we've recently played a couple games that we were very unhappy about the way they did it. So let's talk about the scale of ways that games use these kinds of mystery games use the internet. The most common one, the easiest one, is where you put in your answer on the internet and you can get hints on the internet. Everything else is just paper. And I don't have any problem with that. I think it's it almost sometimes feels unnecessary, but it doesn't bother me. The idea of having to use the internet at the end of the game or to get hints, I don't have a problem with at all. It would be nice if you didn't. If the solution can be in a piece of paper, it should be, but I have no problem with going on the internet to get a sort of longer answer. We've seen companies do other things, though. The Hunt to Kill or Small Boxes make you sign up to get a little epilogue to their newsletter. I really dislike that. And the other, some games say, hey, you may need to use the internet for various things, anything you want. And we played a couple of games where there were ciphers that there's no way you would know. You would just have to go onto Google and say, how do you do this kind of cipher? I did not like that, but I don't find that the most offensive. The ones we really disliked, though, were the ones where you had to have an Instagram account or Facebook account to find the fake account of someone in the game. To me, first of all, I do not want to be forced to create an account. And two, I think it's very risky that those will eventually get kicked off of that platform. So that's the stuff I don't like. And the games that use your real email, like send an email to this person on your real email, I also think that's a mistake. I think the way these games should work, if they want to make a website or whatever, create their own fake social media platform, whatever it is, Facebook, and have the players go on that fake website that they don't need to create an account or a fake, in-game email. Blair Witch was a good example of that. In Blair Witch, all of the sites were in their own little fake website world, and they had its own fake little email world. That was the way it should be. Robert says, I like your idea. Players' actions can change the game. So Sherlock Holmes controlling dice, go in the wrong or right location. You are picked up and moved to a totally different part of the map, which changes the strategy. I don't remember suggesting that, but it's an interesting idea. What were the questions you wanted to ask in the chat? We can always leave a comment on the video for running low on time. Okay, great. One of the questions that I struggle with recently, and I don't know how to solve, is this. It's become clear to me that a huge part of how we experience a game and how much we enjoy it has to do with our expectations going into it. There is no easier way to have a good time playing one of these games than to start out thinking this is going to not be so good. And it really feels like expectations can kill. If you go in with high expectations, it's very easy for the game to not quite live up to those expectations. And I really think for these mystery games, this is really true. So one of the things I really struggle with is when I do a review, like every time I mention Baker Street Irregulars, I talk about how great it is. Now, I really wonder, am I doing a disservice to that? Am I hurting the people who play that game? Because I'm recommending it, but I'm recommending it so highly that I don't know if it can live up to those expectations. And I don't know how to solve that. Like, is the right way to do these things to be like, to have videos Like, let's say you love this genre and you want to have the best experience. Maybe you should not be reading or watching true reviews, even spoiler free. I think spoilers are overrated, but even spoiler free. Maybe what you really want is a channel that just tells you what games to play and then doesn't tell you if they're good or not. Like, is that the solution? If you like these games, do you have to not pay any attention when people tell you they're great? Like, I loved Razorhurst, but part of that came from starting with low expectations. So, I mean, I think maybe one preliminary solution to that is just warn people right from the start. Like, ignore what I'm saying about the game being good. Set your expectations really low. And I would encourage you to, when you play these games, really try to dial down your expectations. But I don't know the right answer to that. I don't know if there's a way as players we can help reset our expectations. Anticipation is, part of what makes life enjoyable. So you sort of it's enjoyable to anticipate and get excited about playing a game, but I don't know how to solve that problem. If anyone has any ideas, I'd love to hear it. And then I had another question about these puzzle games, whether people who have joined me for those or I've thought about them, whether we should keep trying to play those on YouTube or if there's any better way to play them. I'm open to suggestions. I think that was basically, those were my main questions. And then if anyone had any YouTube channels or projects they're working on that they want to talk about, or any games they'd like to see played. Stacy says, keep playing the puzzle games. Let's see, anything else? Looks like we're mostly caught up here. Anything else anyone wants to talk about before we sign off? Stacy says, I'm waiting for Cozy Killer. It is difficult. If you are interested, you can get a co-op for 2 little espresso mug from Zazzle. There's a link to it on the YouTube community tab. I don't get any money from it. They're just priced at cost, but if that's something you're interested in. We are going to play the Cozy Killer game for sure. Anything else? I'm interested in playing the other 2 1930s crime dossier games and the other Sherlock Holmes crime dossier games that we haven't played. We've never even tried that series. And of course, more fan cases for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. We could play some more fan cases for Chronicles of Crime, speaking of Chronicles of Crime. Does anyone else know of any mystery games that are coming out? It feels like there's been a lull in the market for a little while. Other than the Chronicles of Crime expansions. Surely Lucky Duck will put out more Chronicles of Crime games. Or spin-offs. They did spin off a kid's version of Chronicles of Crime, something like that. Any other questions? A reminder, next week, on Friday, not next week, in 2 days, we'll be playing the Postmortem LA. Purple Princess says, what do you do outside of YouTube and work? Any other hobbies? Well, I'm a computer programmer. So I do freelance programming to make my living, which I say very lightly. I'm sort of draining down some savings and just making enough to get by. But computer programming is what I do as my real life. Hobbies, I don't have that many other hobbies. Biking, real life friends want to go on a run recently, which I really need to get in a little bit better shape. I need to do some more furniture building that I haven't done in a while, but I guess programming. Recently, I've been doing a lot of OBS plugin programming and really enjoying it. I submitted a couple of patches to OBS and have had a very unpleasant time trying to get them accepted. So basically, I've just let that go. But if you have any ideas for OBS plugins, if you do any streaming, I'd be happy to hear it. Any word on hidden games number 3 and 4 coming? Well, I looked into that recently, and it seems like there is a new hidden games game. There are a couple new ones. Some are just German, but there is one more that's available in England called something like Green Poison. And if you'll remember the Hidden Games series, they localized their games. They make use a little bit of the internet. I think they even used a mobile phone call that you had to make. And I think I may try to get my hands on the British version of this case, because the Hidden Games people told us they may not make it into America. And I think we could probably play the England-only localized one. So we may try to play that. There's Dark Quarter, which involves Lucky Duck and Van Ryder, which I think is some sort of supernatural mystery game. That sounds interesting. Van Ryder is the company that made Detective City of Angels, and they also made a bunch of graphic novel mystery type games, which I haven't gotten around to playing, but that's a good pedigree. I sometimes wish I hadn't gotten rid of Detective City of Angels, only because the art is so good, and maybe I would give that, if I had it, I might give a try playing another case or two. You can watch the review Greg and I put up of that game. We didn't really click with it, but some people love that game, Detective City of Angels. What got you into playing board games? Have you always been a gamer? I haven't always really been a gamer. I remember, I stumbled onto Pandemic and fell in love with Pandemic, and I still think Pandemic Legacy Seasons 1 and 2 are the best game experiences I've ever had. And my earliest memory, we played some board games as a kid, but my earliest recent modern memory of when the board game stuff clicked for me was Harlan Harris, who was at grad school with me, was telling me about Apples to Apples, of all things. And something about the cleverness of this system of giving everyone a card and each person trying to pick the card that would make the most sense based on the question that the other person asked, submitting it and guessing it, and the humor that came out of that. And games like Dixit, there's a whole bunch. I'm very drawn to the clever, elegant nature of some of these board games, like Codenames, and just being enthralled by that idea. But I do want to say this. This is what I think. I have my theories about introverts and YouTube. For me, I started going to a local game shop here in Champaign called Armored Gopher, and then there was Titan Games. Those are the two big ones. But if I go to a dinner party and the plan is for everyone to sit around and talk, that sounds like a total nightmare for me. And it turns out that I really don't like unstructured social gatherings. Like the plan of getting around to talk, that terrifies me. That idea that there's no structure to the social gathering. And for me, the board games are less about the games and more about sort of the structured social interaction. It's fun to talk and chat and catch up on life, but having some overarching structure to the activity to me is a very enjoyable. And I mean, I like reading the rule books, so I like the logic of understanding the games and what the games make them work, but I also like the sort of social thing. And that's why the cooperative games are the most enjoyable for me when they click, when you're playing with one other person, because you're engaged in a sort of structured conversation. So for me, this Mamonite says, might be worth doing a video comparison of cost versus time and difficulty of various companies for people that have interest in avoiding expectations. I do think I have posted on BGG that it would really be nice to have some sort of way to rank difficulty levels of games. It's very hard to do, but it would be useful. Like Sherlock Holmes cases, is there a way to have some kind of meaningful ranking of the difficulties? All right, I think it's worth, we're probably almost ready to stop here. It looks like all of the technology worked reasonably well. That's good. Any final thoughts? I think I'd like to do these updates a little more frequently than once every 6 months. I always fear we won't have enough to talk about, but somehow we always find a way. All right, Stacy's signing off. I'm ready to sign off too. All right, thanks for joining me. I'll see you in a couple days if you're going to join us for the post-mortem London Gothic. And otherwise, thank you guys for joining me. It's a pleasure talking as always, and I'll see you next time.